Hey, everybody. Welcome. Ba-ba-da-ba. Or actually, you know what? I think the next sound effect we need to get is the Kill Bill sound. That one that's in every song. That's been in every song forever. It's this generation's what's it called? Siren.
Oh yeah, the air raid siren.
Yeah. Well, that one's really like good one too. We need some more announcer ones. I'm going to really once I get back from what's it called? Hope and DEF CON, I'm going to have way better audio setup for this, so we can have every single sound effect just go off at once as we start.
Sweet.
And then, but hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. Lovely evening here. Hopefully, we're streaming, we're live, right?
Yeah,
we are live.
Double checking. So yeah. Wait, everyone just go away. Yes, we're here. Cool. All right.
It's all good.
Yeah, we had a little. So I keep trying to do this thing where I segregate like the opening music from the actual stream itself, and it sometimes screws up the view count and the chat and everything. So we'll find a more graceful way to do it soon. But yeah, everybody, thanks for joining us and coming to hang out. So tonight's going to be really cool. We have a lot of really interesting things to talk about and some cool people coming on later. We have Soldier of Fortran, aka mainframed767 on Twitter, to talk about mainframe hacking. But the first order of business for tonight is to announce the date or the time and location of the exclusive ThugCrowd exclusive world premiere of the movie Unfriended: The Dark Web.
Yes.
So,
this is insane.
Have you guys ever been following the story? Basically, we saw a movie that seemed pretty interesting. It was about the deep web and about the horrors of the deep web. And you know how there's lots of people that do, videos about the deep web, stories from the dark web, and they talk about like, contract killers and red rooms and things like that. And well, there might be some grain of truth to some things. I don't know. I feel like most people just really looking for that intrigue and mystery. So this movie seems to just really kind of play up all that. And so we thought it was really interesting and tweeted at them. And we're asking just for like a hoodie to give away on the podcast. And they ended up just giving us an entire screening in a theater for almost 200 people in the middle of Manhattan to do a screening for us for free. So that being said, we're inviting all of our listeners who are here in the NYC area to come out. So it's going to be Friday, this Friday, the 20th. The showtime is at 7:35 p.m. So we'll probably be there at around 7 to start. We're going to have photos and things like that too. I think that someone said InfoWars is coming. And it's going to be at the AMC Theater.
Whoa.
Back up. Did you say InfoWars is going?
This is a rumor that I heard, but somebody tipped somebody off, so we'll see what happens.
Wonderful.
So this is going to be the largest gathering of dark web hackers that is going to be in one location. It's going to be at the AMC Empire Theater on 34th and 8th. So that's 312 West 34th Street in New York City. It's actually 2 blocks away from the Hope Conference. So we'll be there during the day. And then in the evening, after we eat a bunch of Korean barbecue, we're going to come over and watch this movie and hopefully get to see some interesting things happen. So also the other thing that we like to say is that we want everybody who comes, and we really even if you are not in the area, we still encourage you to invite your friends to come who might be interested, because we want to have a lot of people dressed up the way that movie hackers dress up. So if you can come in your Jinko jeans, your goggles, your Dreadfalls, mesh shirts.
Rollerblades, please. I want to see some rollerblades.
Or if you have 4 or 5 old ThinkPads, just bring them. Just start booting up Linux on them. Blackwords, CDs we can give out. We want to make this as ridiculous as possible, because these people, they are really, I don't know. I feel like this is the first time I've ever really done anything like this. And I think that because we've all been sort of throwing around ideas and really just trying to make this something that's really interesting, just from our perspective, and sort of really own it, I think that if we can invite everybody that we know, and everybody that would be down with doing something funny like this and just kind of laugh watching a silly horror movie together. It'd be really cool.
We're not talking like we want like 20 of you to come. We want like 1,000 of you to come. Like,
Well, there's
we
only
want-
200 seats, but
yeah, exactly. Make it fucking pandemonium though. Like people
We can
demand.
still party outside.
Yeah,
Is-
exactly. This is
you is there an RSVP process that people should know?
So there was no RSVP, but I mean,
Oh,
you can
man.
just say that the password is ThugCrowd. Or if somebody asks you for it, the password actually is password with two $signs for the S. So if somebody asks you, what the
This
password
screening's
is,
ruined.
Yo, do you have that to tweet out real quick? Because that is fucking rad. That's
Yeah, we're going to be
awesome.
boosting that right now. And
yeah, so we
During
have a
or
couple
after the
different
show?
tweets that we're going to be coming out. I was trying to save the actual announcement for the show itself, and then at some point, if I can squeeze it in, I'll tweet it out during the show. If not, at the very end of the show, I'll just tweet it right out, and then you guys can start boosting it. But we also found some interesting things that we aren't sure what's going on with them. There's a couple things like some people are doing airdrop spam in regards to the movie, and so this movie, I think
Wait, what do you
people
mean?
are.
What does that mean?
So people are kind of taking now that ThugCrowd has become involved. People are starting to, I feel, do more pranks or do things that are more sort of weird to try to get more people to come out to the movie with us.
What does airdrop mean
So
though?
airdropping is like how you transfer files between iPhones. It happens. You can do it, from your iPhone and send
just
files and
bombing
things.
like
So
tons of people.
there's people that are some people. There's been the thing is weird. Is I don't know who it is, but there's people who are across the country in different parts of the country who have been airdropping people's like personalized names on what's it called?
like messages.
Like
expected.
messages, yeah, they're pictures that have people's names on them. And so we saw a couple tweets and somebody had tweeted something out. I'm just like, what the fuck? So as soon as we started doing this, there was a bunch of random weird stuff happening in regards to this movie. And so I feel like people are kind of upping the ante to like get people involved to come see it. So I'm really thankful for that. But if you are to do something, just please do not do anything that would get you in trouble.
Yeah, the hacker known as ThugCrowd should stay legal.
Yes, please.
Yeah, and just like so for clarity though, like how do you just do that? Like where's the best place to do it? How do you do it? Where's the place that we're seeing people complain the most?
Oh, I mean, we've seen people on Twitter complaining about people spamming them on trains.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So yeah, I think that's really funny because I mean that's a pretty high density area, and if you're gonna start spamming, I mean it's the same as like blue snar. What was it? Is blue snarfing? Or there's a bunch of different blue prefix things that are basically people spamming each other with Bluetooth. But with AirDrop specifically, you see the picture in the notification that says, "Hey, would you accept this?" But you've already looked at it. So if it's like someone's like, whatever, like weird ass picture, you've already seen it. So like you can't. There's no process that says, "Oh yeah, no, I would like to see what this picture is for." It's just like if it's like a penis or like whatever, like literally, you're gonna see it. There's a moment that you get it.
Maybe.
So
Forced to get a preview.
So I think it would be interesting if more people just started kind of doing it though. That'd be interesting.
People could do it. People could, if you've had any other thing. I was telling people they should maybe set up a promotional Onion site or something to like invite people. But who knows? I don't know what's gonna happen. But I mean, it's all up for grabs. I mean, this company is pretty cool, and they produce like The Purge and Get Out and Paranormal Activity and stuff. So they're like behind some pretty big campaigns and things. So I just think it's funny because now that we're doing this and we've gotten involved, there's just kind of up the bar of like weird pranks and like fuckery that can happen. So I'm really grateful for that.
That's awesome, man. That's great.
You gotta tell everybody to load up Kali or Parrot. They'll say ain't worth it.
Wait, what?
It's just load up Kali or Parrot when you get there. Just
What
be
is
that. Be that guy.
Does Parrot like blast out airdrop?
No.
Oh,
It's just another pen testing distro. One worth checking out for those who haven't.
I mean, if you were to blast out a bunch of Wi-Fi SSIDs, that would be pretty bad. That'd be pretty rad too. I mean, really, just any kind of guerrilla marketing, but you have to include ThugCrowd, or else you didn't include the password. And
Yeah,
you're
ThugCrowd SSID, man. Open. Anybody join. Come on, man.
The airdrop thing is just fucking hysterical, though. I think I saw one earlier, and I think I retweeted it. But that's some next level stuff. That's great.
So yeah, no, this is definitely gonna be a really fun thing to play with. So I guess if you have any funny ideas of how to just sort of get people to come out to this, please just kind of go for it.
Craigslist.
We aren't scared. Yeah, correct. So one of the movie plots is about a laptop that gets found, and somehow
Oh my god!
I guess connected to the deep web. But what's funny is someone mentioned earlier, if you had a laptop, if you were like a deep web like snuff film creator, why would your MacBook not have a password?
Dude, so this reminds me of the BZB book from Load Radio Hour and stuff. There's so many possibilities. Like you can just take it in any direction possible.
Yeah. Oh, also
Amazing.
Load might be there as well to hang out or say hi or at
dude.
least stop by and take a picture with whoever. Alex
That's
Jones.
smart. Yeah. If Alex Jones is there, I'm gonna just basically wow. I can't even say it.
Yeah.
I do
Sure, I
recommend.
can. I'm gonna shit my pants.
I recommend watching that trailer. Inspiration to pile on to some of the interesting things we've seen.
MG, you broke up a little bit. Watch which trailer?
Watch the trailer for this dark web unfriended movie. Get some inspiration from.
It scares
Yeah.
me.
One of the things that was really inspiring to me was the Git diff of Samba's reply.c. That was my favorite. It's like a quick flash, and then they log into the dark web. I think they use Samba to log on.
This goes in well with the original tweet where people hack smart TVs and upload the data or the images and movies to Shodan.io. I think that's what first caught our eye.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. That's the first time I've ever seen Shodan used as a horror trope. So I kind of give him props there because I've never.
Yeah.
Shodan is pretty scary. We do find scary shit on there.
Sure.
It's also where the Chinese are looking on the day to day. Keep that in mind. To be honest, like I stopped an attack on a default fucking database account. And I went and looked on Shodan and I was like, oh cool. That's this server. That's this client. That's fantastic.
No shit. That's great. Yeah, it's an interesting times we live in.
They're good times. They're profitable times, man, for people on both sides for sure.
I think it's a interesting idea for the movie. I heard the first movie wasn't really all that great, but the second movie seems to have legs. And I mean, it's got the creators behind The Purge. It's got like a lot of interesting twists and turns I think it could make. Hopefully. And I mean, if the movie sucks, then just throw your popcorn everywhere. I'm just kidding. Don't do that.
You're not really kidding.
Do it. Do it. Joking.
I'd like to welcome Mainframe D into our news segment. He's here right now, but if he type in, you totally can. But just saying hi and welcome. So we should actually get into the news before we spend a lot of time talking about the deep web. So yeah, the first story that we have here, and I'll post the notes again real quick in our Voiceless Voice channel. So the first story I thought was pretty cool. Actually, Pike, you had mentioned that you might want to talk about it a little bit too. So it's actually about the Girl Scouts that are adding badges. They're adding a bunch of new badges, and one of them is for cybersecurity, which I think is really, really cool. Because people talk about STEM, what's it called? Like having
STEM.
Well, not just even STEM, having kids just grow up with classes about privacy and like about how to protect yourself on the internet and how to, do the cyber. And so having young girls growing up with this and being able to, have that mindset going forward as a self-defense skill and as a just general sort of knowledge skill is definitely something I think it's really cool that they're teaching, especially young girls too.
Yeah, I mean they actually are pretty vulnerable. Like small subsection of people. I mean, all the people that are fucking extorting and stuff. Yeah, make them aware. Teach them.
And it's nice that someone steps in, like, because if schools aren't going to do this thing, someone has to. So it's a good place to do it.
So Australia's also got a similar thing that's and unfortunately the last iteration they used the hashtag cybergirls on Twitter, which I mean you can see a lot of stuff about.
Oh god, I can imagine.
I know, I felt really bad and like actually contacted them and said, hey, this hashtag, is also used by the adult industry or has been previously. Like it's like if you're like a little girl or like and you want to learn about you're learning about this like quote cyber, and I mean a lot of our older people who have been on IRC know that cyber doesn't mean what it means now. And so you're scrolling down hashtag cybergirls, like you want to know all the information, you're like really interested in it, like inquisitive people who get into the field are, eventually they're going to stumble upon that. So I hit him up and was like, hey, maybe cybergirls isn't the best thing to call the thing you're trying to teach little girls. But maybe it is. Maybe it's the hard truth, but no, I'm just joking. They shouldn't be like, you shouldn't expose kids to that. But like, it's just kind of, the internet is a horrible place.
Yeah, it's remind us what Yahoo used to look like in the early 2000s.
Do you think Girl Scouts are going to start selling cookies with like HTTP only and secure flags?
Oh my god.
Thin mints are gonna now just be a green SSL lock. They'll come up and be like,
they're delicious.
They're gonna knock on the door and be like, hey, have you heard of JWT?
It doesn't need a full sleeve though.
That's what the lock is for. It's to limit you to 2.
Womp womp womp. This is where the fucking sound effects come in. Womp womp womp.
So the next topic that we have on our list is, I was thinking about this being a fail of the week, but it's not. Surprisingly. So this was there's a motherboard article about the top voting machine vendor admits that it installs remote access software to systems installed to different states. So
yeah, after they're on record saying that they don't, so fuck them.
This is like pretty ridiculous that there is anything like this on a voting machine. Like, I understand the need for remote administration. That's not lost on, I think, anybody here. But the fact that you would put this on something that is, 1, traditionally paper, and 2, if it's not traditionally paper, it's put into something secure, like physical record, like say like a punch card or some other sort of printout that is then put into some other sort of secure storage that is then brought to some centralized hub. Where does a remote connection fit into that?
Ban electronic voting. Ban it.
I think a lot of these electronic voting systems are actually really old technology now. They're probably designed in the early 2000s. Haven't changed since then.
They're created by the same companies that created ATM machines that are getting jackpotted left and fucking right.
Yeah, the same old school Diebold.
Yeah, they need to be taken off the market. It's the only people that are for electronic voting are people that want to subvert the voting process, and that's as simple as that.
Yeah, and the people that are making money out of selling these things to government, like ESNS and Diebold
and they're largely conservative-run companies as well, by the way.
But I mean, so electronic voting could be a good thing in the future. Like, if there's a better way to manage it, or whatever. Like, it's a possibility, right? So these machines, while they suck, maybe electronic voting won't be as so terrible, like subversive, like you're saying, Dan, in the future. But like with remote admin, like we already have SSH. We've had SSH for so long. Why are they installing like VNC or like PC Anywhere or like whatever they call it now, like logmein.com? Like it's just unnecessary type shit,
Well, it goes
Legacy.
against everything they were supposed to be doing. They went on record saying that, no, don't worry, everybody. We're never going to do this. And then they fucking did it.
In all honesty, they're just putting those type of software suites on there just because it's like the easy thing to do. I mean, you're trying to put people to figure stuff out. It's just like you're hiring the lowest bidder to save money.
Well, thanks. They made it really easy to hijack an election. Cool.
So
I
they put PC
tend to-
anywhere on there. Is this?
You got to think this is incompetence rather than maliciousness. I mean,
I don't know, man. I don't know.
I don't know either, but I tend to err on the side of humans being retards than humans being masterminds.
I think humans have been
Most of the
really
time.
coming during the election. There's been
I would agree with that. I used to do mentoring for PhD students that were attempting to build electronic voting systems. And this was 2 years ago, and they were looking to make basically all of these mistakes all over again, but with insert buzzword here, technology or crypto platform.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
blockchain
So
and AI.
it'll be blockchain cloud voting next year.
TensorFlow.
Well, a lot of legacy or old school dinosaur kind of hardware has dumb shit like PC Anywhere or a dial-up modem or some kind of out-of-band management module thing installed that uses the POT system. It's pretty standard, but like Dan was saying, it's not usually public-facing stuff like voting machines and ATMs. They kind of should have a. It's all very well to have a SCADA device sitting in a power substation somewhere that's got some legacy out-of-band management interface.
Yeah. There's some,
That's bad enough.
There's some
But
reporter.
at least there's some physical security controls over those devices. This is
Mhm.
public facing.
There's some
I think-
reporters covering it pretty in depth, and I think it'd be interesting to have a conversation with them about what they've uncovered so far, because there's a lot of fucking crazy stuff going on. That can
I think
still
there's
happen.
going to be there's going to be a thing very soon where we do get our blockchain voting machines, and the first thing that happens is a 51% attack. Oh my god!
Yeah, right. Or they just start mining
Well, there's-
fucking Monero for no reason.
There's, there's also that, and there's how far can someone flex before you realize, even if we were to impeach or abolish, how fucking shitty we'd be. And I think that's one thing with the media that you see a hell of a lot of that's pretty rough as far as the topic is. Someone can literally post this shit and say, yeah, we have remote access clients here, and nobody, bats an eye. I mean, I guess we do, but it's sad.
This is another one of those scenarios where it's similar to the Mongo database whole thing, right? Like Mongo databases sat on Shodan for how many years, and it took someone ransoming and fucking things up for people to listen, and they still haven't listened fully.
Yeah.
But they listened a little.
Hey,
And I think
the slammer worm all over again. It seems to be the only way to actually to cause people to take action is to
actual
embarrass the
destruction.
company, like cause them actual financial damage and PR damage and media damage till they actually go, oh shit, okay, that's not just an airy fairy risk. This is a real world thing we need to fix right now.
Yeah, agreed.
Unfortunately, that seems to be the case. Like they're going to have to get really screwed over, not just nerds saying you shouldn't use PC anyway. They need to actually get hosed before they do anything about it.
I would not be disappointed at all for somebody to worm something that just fucking ransoms the voting machines right in the middle of
Someone else.
Right in the middle of an election. That'd be great.
Yeah. Can you imagine just WannaCry screen popping up?
Yeah.
I'm trying to vote
Khrushchev
for
3.0. I'm here, dude. Yeah, it'd be crazy.
It would make a point though that this is not viable. This is a crazy path that we've gone down.
But the only reason the ATMs are as secure as they are, I mean, apart from reducing theft, is because they have like compliance standards and stuff. I don't think there would be anything that applies to this hardware that says, we've got a compliance standard that says no remote administration in production. Do you comply with that standard? I don't know if there would be one that applies to this particular hardware.
I think the really sad, unfortunate truth is both sides probably saw it and went, ooh, cool, we can game this. And both sides didn't do anything about it. And then all of a sudden, fucking another foreign country comes in and goes, okay, we'll do something about it.
Yeah.
Who's better at automation?
I've built kiosk systems for that are based on POS terminals before. That they're in the back of warehouses and shit that do provisioning and whatever for routers and stuff. And basically, we just bought these POS terminals, and all it is an Atom board with build a BGA mounted CPU and then a stick of RAM and a hard drive. And our security measures are let's just fucking super glue the hard drive in, Like there's not a whole lot to it other than shit that you already see. So it's like, how do you stop people ripping off your code? Some super glue will do it. A bit of resin, like whatever.
I don't want to say too much on this because this is an actual really bad topic to catch attention on, right?
Yeah.
So hey, let's talk
Nobody
about
that has any experience in this can actually talk to it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, same with
So,
ATM.
let's talk about the well, this is something that kind of was old, but it got put out on CNET, so I decided to just throw it in there because we didn't mention it after somebody had said something about it. So basically people are saying that the Trump Kim Summit USB fans don't have any malware, but so people had, I guess, gone and researched what they are and what they're doing, but one of the things that I was thinking when I first saw this was, if they're just trying to get even one single person, you only have to have one. And you can have 100, 200 ones that are completely benign, but you just see that one person with one that is bugged in any way. And it's just the fact that just giving away anything that plugs into your USB port had something to do with North Korea. I don't know. It just freaks me out still. And I guess I believe that it doesn't contain any malware, but with the sophistication of like actual campaigns that are targeting people, they're not gonna they're gonna do some tactic like that to be able to grab one person.
Yeah, the teardown of the one we saw definitely showed nothing. Like it was all straightforward. But I mean, if you look at a lot of the NSA hijacking USPS Cisco routers and implanting them and shit, they're targeted, right? It's a targeted thing. You're not not every single Cisco router that goes through USPS has an implant in it.
Yeah, if you saw the ant catalog, there's how many thousands of dollars for one of those kind of things. I mean, if they're making and developing even one of those, it's going to be difficult and expensive to deploy. But I mean, if you can ensure that the one target that you have has it, then it makes it all worth it to just have a bunch of white label fans that say like Trump and Kim Jong Un.
Right, and also because it's such a weird thing to have, there's no reason why anyone would actually want one of these.
Yeah, unless it was pulling apart to look for hardware implants. It's the only reason anybody would actually care about it.
But if you're gonna make a fan and give it out of that size, wouldn't you just what's the price difference in putting the controller in there to have it do USB-C or a Lightning or whatever versus putting a button battery in there that runs it for the day?
I don't know.
It's trivial especially for nations.
Right. Yeah. Such a low price to get a battery and not have all this hardware in there to run the stupid thing. It's a motor with some blades. Put a battery.
It's really easy for people to resell this shit too when you look at it. And to be honest, I think that anybody who's not blue teaming, who's not blocking USB storage, is a fucking idiot. If you're gonna allow your place of business to get attacked like that, you honestly deserve it. There's so much object and user filtering that you can do. It's infuriating.
I want to agree with you, but it's hard, man. Especially large enterprise. You got to think, especially with BYOD, bring your own device. People are bringing their personal machines in.
That's a topic that's really dying out, though. To be honest, where I work for in private government, you don't give shit to anybody unless it's domain owned and heavily mediated. It's the way it is.
I don't know, man. Not my experience, but
yeah, I understand a lot of people aren't as good. That's rough.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? I've worked for really good companies and I work for really bad companies, and the really bad companies are doing stuff that's just
I mean, 82.1x, right? Someone brings their shit in and they get dumped on a guest VLAN and they can't do anything. But how many people I've seen it in the wild 2 or 3 times, maybe.
802.1x.
That
sounds about right. 1 or 2 times. It's not common. There's a lot of corporations that are wanting to move towards it, but the actual corporations that or the actual amount of enterprises that I've seen successfully deploy something like that without it being just fucking ridiculous is minimal to none.
Yeah, I think I've seen it more in private corporation than any sort of like place that should have it.
I've seen it. I've seen it successfully in power industry, and that's about it. Allegedly.
When you think about it too, it's like, why are you using USB? Whether or not it be like a backup device or any kind of transfer, like why the hell does somebody need that in the first place? What's theirs, like property to the company?
To cross an air gap, man.
So last time I flew on a plane with a USB port in the back, I had noticed that the same plane from my previous flight had the two data pins removed from the USB port. So there's only active and ground are the only two pins physically there, which is funny because USB killer still works. Lol, hack. But taking the pins out is like, the charging port in the back of the seat. That's a pretty good idea.
Definitely.
You're saying the charger in the plane. Yeah, that's smart. That's good.
So the next one that I had that actually was pretty interesting, just understanding the scope of something that was going on. We had heard about the Ticketmaster breach, and I think it was you, Shell, that shared this about basically like it has been found out that there is one single group that was responsible for the Ticketmaster breach, as well as apparently 800 different e-commerce sites around the world that have been targeted by this one single group called MageCart. And apparently what they've been doing is they didn't get into the technical details of it, but it's what they describe as a digital credit card skimmer. Basically something that is client side that is scraping credit card data from users as they use the websites in question. So this seems like it must be some sort of, they might be attacking a certain cart software or some certain framework for these kind of websites, but there's a documented 800 different websites that they have been doing this on.
That's amazing.
Pretty ridiculous, pretty widespread.
Yeah,
the first plugin that they compromised was the Inventor plugin, which is a live chat JS plugin.
Yeah, and how many sites have that thing? Hey, do you need help with something? And then it connects you to a person or BombGuard.
So it's probably not just Ticketmaster. I mean, they might have been the biggest and most highly trafficked target.
I think we're going to see.
Likely, there's a lot of undiscovered smaller e-commerce sites that have got nothing to do with this that also got hit.
Yeah, apparently
some kind of client-side JS keystroke recorder. That's probably how it works.
Yeah, that's what it kind of sounded like to me.
Yeah, I recently was looking at a site that had been attacked where it was like nulled plugins for e-commerce for e-commerce platforms that had been like straight up payloads in the top of the file, and like developers are like, oh, I'm not paying for that e-commerce plugin, just install it, and then boom, done, you're over. And like it then infects every other plugin, and like persistence within web app, like annoying.
But it ended up being like a pirated thing. That's amazing.
Yes, it was null. It was like in capital. The plugin was like plugin name dash null.
Wow. Oh, like that was just an example. They're talking about how it was a supply chain. It was just from just third-party vendors, third-party suppliers of scripts.
Oh man. So they set up like trust relationships for these third-party plugins like chatbots and stuff. So security headers that we've added into browsers and servers in the last few years just become totally moot, because as part of the partnering process, you have to add an exception for thirdpartyserver.com to allow them to access your DOM. Otherwise, client-side JS wouldn't work to be able to capture keystrokes.
Yeah,
wait,
it just continues with like the theme of supply chain being like a giant like glaring weakness.
It depends on the site that you're able to nail with cross-site scripting, though, right?
Yeah, I was just saying.
Both. Like if you can edit the code on, say, I don't know what it's called.
G-static.
Social Plus is the one that got affected in this breach. So Ticketmaster pulls in Social Plus JavaScript code from a Social Plus CDN box,
Mhm.
and they'd have to add some kind of cross-origin security header that says scripts on this domain can access information on star.ticketmaster.com.
Yeah.
In order to be able to read from the parent DOM, in order to be able to do things like keystroke record, and not be sandboxed within a specific DOM for that third-party plugin.
Isn't it
Can
funny
you,
how quick that got like just turned around? Like that was a pretty solid security feature, but how quickly it just got abused by the actual developers to become just another security nightmare.
Yeah.
Can you do like because with the CSP headers you can select scripts or images or whatever. Does anyone know just off the top of their head if you inject a image which is a SVG which contains your payload, does that still count as scripts or?
That's still valid.
Who knows? There's no
Still
kind
valid?
of signing. There's no certification or signing of the code. So if it pulls a JS script from a trusted domain, it doesn't then check a hash to make sure the script hasn't been modified or anything.
No. But with an SVG, you can do like XSS with SVG, like an image file, right? And then in your CSP, you can be like images only can be pulled from this domain, not scripts. But then being an image, it would still get executed, I guess, because SVG.
No, I think not something a lot that the popular, or I shouldn't even say popular, it's far from, but I don't think it's anything the mass majority looks at.
Yeah, it's something we should look at later.
Oh yeah. So speaking of compromised things in general, the npm ESLint compromise that just happened made everybody freak out. You guys experience any panics with this?
With what?
I think we always panic about npm, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
yeah, npm had a something that was basically gaining access to people's npm creds through a compromised package. And
the payload, the attack path was he compromised the developer's GitHub credentials. So that seems to be a really fun thing to do lately.
I got fucked over by this npm thing once, and I probably won't be messing with it too much more after that.
Yeah, I recall like I've mentioned this on the show before, but like I think it was Bcrypt Yan like on Twitter said that over 50% of like npm credentials could be hijacked, were like vulnerable to hijacking. So seeing this is like not surprising.
Yeah, not only that, but I mean, like you're talking about libraries that are so easily mistyped, or easily you think it has an S on the end of it and it doesn't. There's so many ways to just really like root your box.
Didn't we talk about like botting GitHub stars to get higher on npm before? I'm pretty sure we've mentioned that before.
Not in any specific context.
No, but as an idea, as a thought crime.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, and I think it'd be a great thing to think about.
Well, I just can't. Every single week in our news topics, there is another breach of another distro or a software package or a package manager or something, and the root cause of that is GitHub credentials were obtained somehow.
It comes down to, again, like you can yell and scream about, hey, there's this theory that I have that you could typo squat, or you could do this and that with npm credentials, and nobody's really gonna listen. But if you start actually fucking up the code, people are gonna notice way more.
Yeah, left pad or whatever it was that like broke half of Node.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to like absolutely advocate that just please slash and burn everything you come across, but it really does seem to be effective in teaching.
Yeah, do you guys think it's weird after like on Microsoft acquisition that this stuff happens? Like, to be honest, I do.
With
Not
npm?
really.
No, with GitHub in general.
With
But
GitHub as a whole.
I agree.
What did I miss here?
Well, just saying, like, they bought GitHub and you see all this stuff come out after the fact. Like, what do you think? It's just negative press or like inside exploitation for...
I don't think there's any correlation there. I think, like they said, there's a history of these plays. Not anything new.
Yeah, like if you subscribe to like if you've ever trialed GitHub Enterprise, you forever get updates on email updates telling you they've fixed security vulnerabilities. So GitHub are like actively finding bad shit all the time and fixing it.
Well, I think they might have got a little more attention after the acquisition from even like bug bounty hunters and stuff. I know GitHub probably already had bug bounty, and that probably hasn't changed. But now they're in the Microsoft scope. Maybe that changes attention from
or payouts, maybe
payouts.
Yeah,
maybe the incentives a little bit. Who knows?
Aren't they blowing
You know, if I was
their?
Chinese, I'd be looking closer at Microsoft right now just because of the acquisition.
Yeah,
absolutely.
True. Aren't they blowing their incentive though by talking about it publicly without disclosing it through a bug bounty program?
True. But at the same time, if I find something useful that I can use for lulz, I'm not going to tell anyone about it.
Right.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, but like, it's funny. They have been making efforts as well. Since the acquisition, they added like Python. Like they check requirements.txt now for Python vulnerabilities, like nested stuff. That was added recently.
But how does that work?
So they scan repositories for like your I can't remember. I'm not sure what list of languages it is, but like when you have dependencies listed through the standard method for your language or whatever, they actually check to see if like if there's known CVEs in either your dependencies or a function you call or something. I don't know exactly how they're doing it, but you get notifications that says, hey, this library that you use is like owned. Do something about it. Upgrade.
Challenge.
Yeah, just use every vulnerable library in like one repo and see how self DDoS.
So another compromise of something that a lot of people use. So apparently Arch Linux was compromised as well, or a couple of packages in the AUR. Basically, it was like the Acrobat PDF reader, a couple other packages. Basically, just had one single curl -s with like a script into bash command that just was added to the end of these. And then just connect to some CNC server and run some commands and just check out your computer. It seems like it just runs like Pac-Man to see what's actually installed and who your user is and things. And so, yeah, I don't really know what the purpose of it besides maybe some sort of like just figuring out who's using the package and then being able to do some sort of like second, third stage loader after that. But
was it looking for anything like? Has anybody actually gotten their hands on it and looked at it? Like, is it looking for something specific?
I haven't, but if anybody does want to, you can go there. Or actually, I'll just share the link in the Twitch chat here. It's basically there's like an Acrobat reader, and then I don't know the other two. I don't know what these packages actually are, BALZ and Minergate, but yeah, they're from the AUR though. So those are things that aren't canonical. They're not like standard Arch packages. They're from the user repository, so it's kind of like Git. You can kind of put whatever you want on there. But I mean, the AUR
Arch user repository, yeah.
Yeah, so it has a lot of good packages on it that people use. People like have other ways of getting in touch with it. But yeah, so I don't know. It's definitely interesting to another sort of like actual OS sort of
the repos, right? It's fucking crazy. Yeah, there was a Debian repo issue with the Romanian mirror for like the past week now. I kind of wonder what the hell was going on with that. I never looked into it.
See, the thing is with I have this thing against rolling release sort of for this reason. A lot of people tell me I'm an idiot, but like being part of the distro vulnerability lifecycle previously for non-rolling release distros, I can tell you that like things are tested and shit, and like when you have this gap because you've got rolling release and then you've got like the this Acrobat reader that needs it's a closed source thing, it has a wrapper that installs some blob or whatever, it's like maintained by a guy, and the guy has to keep up with with his AUR package. Same thing with Launchpad, like a lot of the like PPAs that you'll add for Ubuntu or whatever, like single user maintainers and things like that aren't necessarily, they're just trying to keep up. Like there's the security team's not actively doing stuff to make sure that known vulnerabilities that are being reported that have CVEs are like getting patched, and not like code that's actually committed isn't checked, because how many people do you need to do that?
I don't know. I think it's dumb in the first place. I think given Adobe's history and like the exploitation process and what's happened with their products, I don't think it's smart to even run in the first place. Anybody who is like honestly probably deserves this. This is pure garbage. There's no point.
I wanted to just mention one more thing really quickly before, or actually with two short things to do, and then we should probably just get into the mainframe stuff, because a lot of people are interested in this. You'd be surprised, mainframed. There is a lot of people here who want to actually hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised, but it's interesting that there's a lot of people who came specifically to Twitch to see this. So it's pretty cool. Usually people go to conferences and to see something of this sort of topic. So yeah, just funny. Here's a link to the indictment for the special counsel, Howard Mueller, and the 12 Russians. So just in case anybody tells you that Russia didn't hack something, they did. And then the fail of the week, I think, is just funny. I want to throw in here. It's the last thing on our notes. So apparently these people who had made some ransomware just sort of had a, they got kind of salty after somebody said that their ransomware was a scam, and stated that they weren't paying people, or they weren't actually decrypting people's files after they ransomed them. And so they took offense to this on Twitter, and just sort of like had a little blowout about what they're doing and how it's not a scam, even though it's fucking ransomware and it is a scam. It's just extortion, but if it's not extorting in the particular way that they want to be described as having done, I think this is hilarious that somebody is defending their craft of ransomware.
Yeah, it's good ransomware.
So if you do find ransom, I mean, this reminds me, honestly, if I didn't see this on Bleepy Computer and I saw this as a write-up on a website, if it said buy lolcow, I would completely because this is something that you would do.
Number one, I love this alias because they definitely followed through, being Ouroboros, eating their own tail.
No, it's interesting to see that the state. I mean, because what I think is interesting is that nowadays we have things like the zoo, and we have other sorts of repositories of malware that people can just download. I mean, you can get the full source for the Jigsaw ransomware in C# that has the full solution file and everything that you can just run in Visual Studio and compile your own ransomware. You just got to change the Bitcoin address in the text and make whatever you want out of it. So I feel like we're getting to a point now where it's like people are just becoming ransomware script kiddies that are just going out there and making this kind of shit, and then like bringing their childish antics along with it. It's really crazy to see.
I mean, Zeus and like all those others, like all that we've seen over the years, same thing, right? Like there's so many variants because the source code got shared to like some kids.
Yep. And then they sold they had a special encryption routine or something, and then resell it as something else. They're all kids. They're all literally like either children by legally children, or they have the mentality of children, and that's pretty standard across like the carding scene, the ransomware scene, the virus scene in general.
Plain text CNCs, like plain text CNC credentials. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, I'll share this into the chat as well. This here, if you are interested in malware research, or if you're interested in just seeing how people are actually doing this here is like the compilation. There's both originals and source. And people, if you ever want to see how it actually works and how these people are deploying this really shit code, yeah, this is pretty much what you're up against in terms of a lot of the shit ransomware that you'll find on Twitter. So yeah, and I also really would like to apologize to White Hat Sec, who I guess has been muted and talking, and I didn't know. So I'm really terribly sorry for that.
Oh yeah, if you're muted and you can't talk and it wasn't us, just keep reloading Discord. There's probably an issue with WebRTC.
Yeah, there's also been issues as well with Discord getting issues today with Google Cloud and stuff. So yeah, I was actually concerned that it was going to be available for tonight.
There's actually a lot of people muted now that I'm looking at the stream. That's crazy.
Probably a good idea to start talking about secondaries just in case this one just flat out fails.
Wait, what?
Probably something just kind of note for later. Start talking about secondary, pretty much means of communication just in case something fails.
No, we have to put everything in a single point of failure.
Yeah, live a little. Come on.
It'd be fun.
Come on,
We do it. Literally, we do it live.
This is like the Gmail of fucking podcast. It's amazing.
So yeah, mainframe. I don't know what to call you exactly. Soldier Fortran. Everything is very dramatic, so I'm like, I don't want to like underwhelm.
I mean, you can just call me Soldier Fortran or. I mean, either or works.
Well,
what's the second one?
My name. I mean, it's not a secret anymore. It used to be, but it's not really.
I'll just call you Soldier. No.
Yeah, you can call me whatever you want. I mean,
sure.
I don't care.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much for joining, and thanks, White Hat Sec, even though we couldn't hear you at all, or White Hack Sec. Thank you guys for joining us. So yeah, I mean, we're really interested in this whole space here, and I know that you do a lot of talks and trainings, and I kind of just wanted to give you a little bit of time to sort of like introduce yourself to people who might not know who you are.
Yeah, I mean, so I don't know. It's kind of hard to. I hate introducing. But basically, I started out. I was a mainframe sort of novice. I used to be an auditor for a Big Four consulting firm, and I had a deep Linux background. And so when I joined the Big Four consulting firm, they were like, "Hey, you should go." And I literally knew dick about mainframes. They were just like, "Here's a checklist and go do this." And it wasn't until I want to say maybe 10 years later, I joined Visa, the credit card company, and we we brought in a company to help us with mainframe security audits, like to do a real I was kind of sick as an auditor. I was sick and tired of like these sort of high level bullshitty kind of mainframe audits, and so I worked real hard on trying to really put the Visa mainframes through their paces in terms of a real security audit. And so we brought in this consultant, and this guy was billed to us as like a mainframe security expert, the best in the world, and dude didn't know netstat from his asshole. It was just the worst. And so at that point I realized that this space had no one. Like in terms of mainframe hackers, mainframe pen testers, there was really no one who was doing this. And then I looked, and I specifically DEF CON, ShmooCon, all these conferences, right? Black Hat, whatever. There's no mainframe talks. And until I started talking publicly about this, there were literally no, as far as I'm concerned, until maybe last year, there's only been one mainframe talk at Black Hat, and it was me, right? And when you look at this platform, right, like everyone who's in the stream, everyone who's listening, used a credit at some point. It may be in the last 24 hours even, that goes through a mainframe. If you do any banking, if you bought jeans at the Gap, if you rode a plane, that all goes through a mainframe. These systems are systemic to our financial, manufacturing, all kinds of like enterprise lives, but no one's fucking talking about it. So it really bothered me, and so that's why I started doing what I do.
And it's to this day. Like, it's not like, hey, this was an issue. It was an issue until 1990, and now it's not anymore, but I still like these for some weird reason. It's fucking absolutely in use today.
If you look at the stuff that IBM puts out, you look at the documentation IBM puts out, and don't get me wrong, I won't shit on IBM too much. You look at what IBM puts out.
They don't sponsor us. They
don't sponsor me. But you look, they say something like 90 to 95% of the Fortune 500s run a mainframe, like a ZOS mainframe, which is what I thought.
Yeah. Hey, I do have the first question really quick, though.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead.
You said they don't know TCP dump, right?
Yeah, what about it?
You don't run on ZOS?
So the software itself doesn't, but ZOS comes with its own sort of TCP dump. Like you can dump the TCP packets and you can dump it into a TCP dump formatted file that you can then just read in Wireshark.
I think that's a really interesting way to kind of lead into the mindset of mainframes. It's not your typical just Linux mindset. Like there's this crazy almost level of abstraction, right?
Yes and no. I think that the challenging part for people to realize is like, and this is something. So I have a partner in this, Big Endian Smalls on Twitter.
He really is.
If you ever hear the two of us talk, we went to RSA. We talked about this. We talk about this. It's literally just a computer, right? So it's no different than a Linux box. It's no different than a Windows box. It's just a computer. Okay, yeah. So some of the things that the computer does might be a little different, and the way you call those things out are a little different. But it's literally just a computer, right? So the same concepts apply. Do buffer overflows work in ZOS? Well, yeah, of course they do, right? It's a von Neumann architecture. But that doesn't mean you don't have to do pen tests on it because it's different, right?
Yeah.
I think you don't do pen tests on it because nobody knows how to do it.
Well, I mean, but that's like saying we don't do pen tests on our voting machines because no one knows how to do it.
Well,
or we're not willing to pay the people who can do it to do it. You know what I mean? Like
that's what we're up against, you know.
So this is something that I fight against. So I'll quote my buddy Big Endian Smalls again. There's a real great podcast called Terminal Talk, and he was part of their security part of that podcast. Not to pimp another podcast on a podcast. I'm sorry. And so on that, he said, not pen testing your mainframe with a professional pen tester who can do mainframe is like telling your doctor you don't want to have a stress test because you might have having a heart attack at the doctor's office on a treadmill is probably the best place to have a heart attack, because at least A, you know you're going to have a heart attack, and B, they're equipped to fix it, versus having some rando come in, some malware come in and take down your entire, point of sale system because you didn't update your mainframe in time, right? I mean, that to me is the nightmare, right? Like some malware gets in and takes down a mainframe at Target, right? But that could happen. We don't know, right? There was no lie. So this really happened. I was in front of people from, I won't name the company, but they make the mainframe, and I was in front of them asking, "Are you aware of any breaches that ever happened on the platform?" And they looked me right in the eyes and said no. And at like the same time in Sweden, a breach was happening of a mainframe. Like at the same time, right? So these platforms aren't impenetrable.
No, of course not.
They're just, people just aren't aware of how systemic they are to our environment. And people have been taught, I guess, just through ignorance in schools, they've just been taught that these are old and dying and you don't need to worry about them because they're a legacy platform and no one's using them anymore. Right?
Yeah, I guess I don't even know if it's necessarily that people are being taught don't worry about them. It's just it's. I've been in a class where the first half of the class, for the first year or two, we learned AS400 and RPG programming and all that, and it's so fucking boring, dude. It's horribly boring, right? And like, so when you're able to like put that aside and all of a sudden you can win nuke your entire school all at once and blue screen everybody's machine and have fun. I think that's where some of it comes in. Fun.
I'm gonna quote an old coworker of mine at Visa when he said I'm gonna steal it straight up. He used to onboard interns. He used to say exactly what you're saying. Who cares? The mainframe is boring.
It is boring. It's not
right.
It's not that it's not useful though.
And he said, look, if you want to go play with a system that'll interrupt the HR people and make their lives hell for a couple of days, go for it. If you want to cause a global international collapse because you fucked up, come join my team. If you can't handle that pressure, that's fine. I get it. But the reality is, when you go and you fuck up with a bunch of Windows machines on down Sony for a couple of days, who cares, right? Sony's still making movies. They're still making games. you bring down the gaps, or like worse, you bring down Walmart's mainframe environment. You're causing people to not get paid their paycheck that week. You're causing people to not get their frosted flakes because of their just-in-time inventory not showing up.
DEFCON 2 years ago, like 3 years ago maybe, Delta's mainframes went down at the end of DEFCON, and I was stuck in an airport for 3 days.
So here's what's funny about that story. What I've heard, the rumor is, the mainframe was up. So this is my favorite story from that. So Delta lives and breathes by their mainframes, right? That their whole entire flight infrastructure. So I'm told, right? I've never been on their environment. Their entire flight infrastructure is mainframe based, but they have this like nice web-based interface to let the millennial people use a web interface to like push planes back from the gate and get people checked in and all that shit. The middleware of that interface that talks to the mainframe went down. That's what caused the outage. The rumor is there were still a bunch of like old time gate agents who knew the mainframe system still. And they logged into the Delta mainframe and got their planes pushed back, despite there being a quote unquote global outage. So that problem is so this is how important this platform is to various enterprises, right? Is no one is hosting their their mail server on a mainframe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if email goes down for an hour or two, everyone is more productive for a bit, right? Who cares? But literally when mainframes go down, it's in the millions of dollars of costs to companies. It makes international news.
Yeah. Hey, Zoof, you had something.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've worked in finance and I've worked with mainframes specifically, and it is a dying breed. And most of those people who are actually like core to it have died in the past 10 years. So I was going to say, like, what's the mitigation process? What's the migration process? And why isn't this more of a focus? I guess I can see why from you coming into us as hackers, like it's more of a general vast population and there's more of like a service level attack given. But I was wondering from your standpoint, do you tend to steer towards something more not mainframe focused, or is your focus just mainframe specifically?
I mean, there are 7 of us, I would say 7 of us in the world who do mainframe hacking.
I want to interrupt you real quick, and that's why I'm not surprised. Like I'm saying, like that's why I say this is like a dying fucking software, is because, like I said, like most of these people have died in the last 10 years, and I've talked to like a lot of really smart older people who just, there's not much of a team and there's not much support around it, and it's really rough to see, and there's no real focus around that as an attack vector.
Like I've been on mailing lists my whole life. Like I've been on, like I'm an older guy, but I've been on mailing lists for a long time. And I've never been on a mailing list where there are people on the mailing list who have died off just from old age. I've been on mailing lists where someone dies off or ODs or whatever, but I've never been on a mailing list where someone just died because they're old.
Well, okay, maybe
until
not died,
I joined.
But they've retired though. There's absolutely people that are retired from the mainframe era. Absolutely,
there are people on the mainframe mailing list who have died of just old age.
Okay,
just straight up, like that's how, like, it's a dying breed, right? But the problem is your enterprises aren't getting rid of the platform.
Right. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, do you introduce something that's like a migration to move them to, or do you say like, hey, this shit is old, like we have a dying breed of people, or we have like a dying focus, whether or not that be the right term, but is there something that you guys present, or do you just tend to develop on the same exact mainframe they've been using?
That's a good question.
So the challenge is no one's moving off this platform. They've already got their RO, right? Like they've like tenfold. The platform has something like 6 or 7 of uptime. They're not getting rid of it anytime soon. And there's a huge, this is from IBM and all the major corporations that support the platform. There is a huge push to get new talent in to help support the platform.
But to help support an antiquated platform, and I mean, I'm not trying to.
Not antiquated though. IBM released the new architecture last year.
I mean, it's antiquated. Like you got to admit it's antiquated. And I'm not saying
when you say it's antiquated, do you mean the same way that 2012 is antiquated because it's based on Windows NT?
Yeah, absolutely. 2012,
and it's running on like an Intel architecture. Like, what do you mean by antiquated? You just
2012 is
was
old news. You're absolutely right.
So-
2012.
Right.
is
Okay. So server
ancient
2018 is antiquated then, because there's probably portions of the NT kernel still in the 2018 kernel.
No, that's
Well-
not what I'm saying.
Okay. So what do you mean by antiquated? What do you mean by does it mean antiquated? The
I mean
original operating system is old.
Antiquated in that you can count the amount of experts, as you say, on less than 2 hands.
So
But that's not. I mean, you could count the number of experts on 2 hands for like systems.
I think you mean archaic then.
I'm not trying to come
For-
at you, by the way. I'm
No,
not
I
trying
know,
to
I
say
know.
this negatively. I'm just trying to say,
I'm taking
look,
this very personally, and I'm super upset right now.
Don't
I am
worry
so
about it.
pissed. I'm going to break my laptop.
What?
I know this is. I'm glad.
Why?
No, I don't care. No. I think
We're all
the reason
chilling.
I don't get. I'm not upset. I'm just saying this is the argument we deal with in the mainframe space a lot, and not just from a mainframer's perspective, right? Like I hate. God, this sounds so terrible. I hate taking the mainframers like stance, right? But the challenge is you deal with a lot of bias in this space that it's old,
Sure.
right?
But that's part of it, right?
But it's only old in the same way that a Cisco router is old, right?
A PIX 5.
No, I mean
is
like a
old.
current Cisco router,
Okay.
right? If you bought a current Cisco router today, right? Like whatever that platform is,
Sure.
it's a
Can I
brand new
ask a
hardware, brand
technical
new
question?
architecture. Yeah, go for it.
Just thinking as someone who may or may not have owned a mainframe or 2 in his time, how do you interface with your mainframe operating system? How do you do you SSH? Do you telnet to it? Do you have a web interface? Do you have a client application?
All of them. I mean, I generally use. So when we teach the class, so Big Any and Smalls and I teach a class on mainframe pen testing. In fact, I'm teaching a workshop at B-Sides Las Vegas if you're interested. But I use SSH and TN3270, which is like built on top of Telnet.
Right. So when I go after, if I was to try and own a mainframe or a corporation using a mainframe,
yeah,
I would probably own the guy that connects to the mainframe. I would own his desktop machine, and
I don't even go that
much
far.
doesn't matter from that point what operating system the mainframe is using, or all the security controls of the operating system at all, because I have management access to the device. So maybe that's why people don't really focus so much on the deep dive into the mainframe operating system.
So it's funny.
It's like an embedded Linux device or a printer or whatever. I'm not going to spend all my time learning the ins and outs of a printer's operating system when I can just own the admin's desktop and have an SSH key straight to every single printer on the network.
Yeah, I mean, so that's something that I hate to keep bringing it up, but Big Any and Smalls made a great point. He gave basically what he says is, I don't need to break into your mainframe. I just need to break into your admin's computer. So I don't need to be a hacker. I just need to be you, the admin, right?
That's the same thing as like iHunt sysadmins back in the day.
Yeah, but that's like, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's no different than me hunting like people who manage other application servers.
There's
right?
a couple of thousand of guys in the world that are super gun engineers at smart meters, for example, and the operating system they use. And you can count on 2 hands the number of people that could actually say they hack smart meters and know a lot about it. And that's how I kind of think of mainframes as well.
Yeah, but so the challenge is, and this is something we've talked about really, and it's something I struggled with when I first started doing this, is like, I remember there was a Derby talk. I was super stoked. There was a Derby talk. I don't mean to slam on the guy because the talk was really good, but the talk was, I owned a mainframe. And I was so pumped because I'm like, this is actually legit the only talk that I have not given about mainframe hacking at a major conference. And so I eagerly waited for the live stream and I watched the talk. And the talk was 45 minutes about this guy phishing and social engineering a mainframe admin. And the end of the talk was, and I got his creds. Right? And so what? So you got, but to me, so what? So you got the creds. Right? That's like, that's like very early 2010s, maybe early mid 2000s thinking of like, okay, so I got domain admin. The enterprise doesn't care. Like the enterprise business owners don't care. So what? So
maybe
you
take
got access to the mainframe,
maybe
but
take
what
it from this
what do you
point of view,
do
though.
after that?
Maybe take it from this point of
Yeah.
view. What other ways have you owned mainframes that are directly because you've owned mainframes? Like, take us through the technical hurdles that you had to get through to own an actual mainframe.
So
That might kind of open our minds a little bit.
Can I
add to that
I'm
real
enjoying
quick?
the discussion, by the way. I love this. This is my favorite, like blowing minds. Everyone probably remembers struts,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Like that's so
Hang on
that's
1 second.
Yeah, go.
Had, one minute. MG, what you got?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add to exactly what you're asking, with a slight refinement. This would probably help the whole scope of the conversation. So with traditional servers out there, Linux boxes, the most common things people are fucking up is not patching, leaving S3 buckets open, things like that. What are the equivalents within mainframe space to kind of contextualize this? What are the biggest fuck ups that everybody's doing?
So okay, so one I will say is the biggest. So you got to remember, mainframes haven't been publicly pen tested, like and anyone talking about this since like maybe 3 years ago. So until 3 years ago, even someone publicly talking about it was a no-no, right? So the maturity there is kind of lacking. I can say with certainty, probably 90% of the time, a password spray will get me in. Right? We're still the mainframe. So like the so a lot of times enterprises. So in I don't want to get too much into the weeds, but basically the main interface in the TS to the mainframe, like the main, like I want to say bash prompt maybe, is TSO.
By the way, you can get in the weeds, man.
Oh, okay,
like, that's
then
what
fine. So
go for
the main
Just
interface, the main like command line I will say is TSO, which stands for time sharing option. Okay.
Right.
And so you log in through TSO. But the TSO login panel, think of it like a login page almost, right? Like a web interface. It suffers from user enumeration. So you can enumerate all the users who have access to TSO. So once I get a username, I can enumerate the entire user space. Most of the time.
And
from
just
there,
real quick question to interject.
Yeah.
What are you using, like Python, Perl, just
Nmap.
regular stuff, right?
I wrote an Nmap
NSE, right?
TN3270 emulator.
Okay,
nice.
And then in Lua, in fucking Lua. So I wrote I wrote a TN30. Yeah, well, so I wrote it. So the whole concept that Big Annie and I share, like Big Annie and Smalls and I share this concept of, you shouldn't have to come to us for the tools. The tools should come to you. So if you have Kali right now, so all the listeners, if you have Kali right now, an updated version of Kali comes with a TN3270 emulator in Nmap. It has been there for like 2 years.
Damn.
There's a whole bunch of TN3270 scripts. So there's a TSO enumerator, there's brute, there's a Kix enumerator, Kix brute, Kix user brute. There's all this kind of stuff that's just included as part of Nmap, so that it would just be there when you need it.
All right, let me ask the tough question.
Yeah.
Are there any views on Shodan that people might or might not be able to mess around with?
I mean, I won't say you can mess around with that, but there are mainframes on Shodan. In fact, if you look, I can't remember. There's a Shodan telnet type. I can't remember that off the top of my head, but there's a Shodan. Well, there are mainframes, but they're not on Shodan. So in Shodan, if you do, I think TN. So one of the options in Telnet is TN3270E. And if you pass Shodan that Telnet option, it'll show you all the mainframes that it's found that reply with TN3270E as the reply, right? So like if you know the Telnet handshake, it goes like, you connect and then you do like an IAC. Like, so what happens is a mainframe will say IAC do TN3270E. And then you say, yeah, I'll do that.
So
right?
you
And
really
that's an option.
You really are looking at it from the protocol up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so so if you look at Shodan, you can find them. Or if you go to my website, which is screenshot on Twitch, if you go to my, like, I can't remember.
What's your site?
That's a great question. Mainframes project. I got to look it up. Mainframesproject.tumblr.com. Yeah, I'll send it. I'll put it in the chat.
Tumblr site. Oof. All right.
I mean, I use Tumblr because
it.
Let's see. There we go. I'll put it in the voiceless chat. So, but essentially, that project came out I'm curious what's out there because people would tell me that our mainframes aren't on the internet, and I'm like, well, that makes sense. Like, why would you put your mainframe on the internet? That's not what I would do. And then I have found almost 600 to 700 mainframes at this point that are internet facing.
I don't like finding.
So just to pull it.
on the internet.
Sorry, Dad. Just to pull it, just like back a little bit. I want to just like quickly like. So the first time I was in a knock, like when I was really young, and I'm walking through the knock, and I see all the racks of whatevers, and then I see like the mainframe separately, and I look at them, and there's these big IBM motherfuckers, and it's the heavy metal, and I got told like I got asked what this big red switch on the front was or whatever, and I said that's the power switch, and the guy that I was with said no, that's the career reset button. At that point. That was basically like my holy fuck, I don't want to touch this shit. And that was really intimidating to see this huge metal box that I don't know what's inside, but it does computer. So compared to like an
blow
average,
your mind.
Tell me what's inside.
So that box is literally just CPU and RAM. There's not even hard drives in there.
What happens if you press the button though?
I mean, you would bankrupt a company. You would cost them millions of dollars that day.
Sweet.
It's fine. It's it's not different than shutting down a warehouse.
Do it, anybody.
That's why my card doesn't work. God damn it.
Like you joke, but that is what that button would do.
I'm not joking. I'm telling you the truth from experience. I know.
in the mainframe hacking world, which is very small, we don't tend to touch production systems because the outages would get us invited to Congress.
Wow, really? Holy
right,
shit.
like
so you're relying on an organization to have a proper staging or dev environment.
Oh, the one advantage of the mainframe world is guaranteed. If someone has one mainframe, they have because they're literally not gonna develop on it. They just won't. It's too costly.
Yeah.
So they'll have a dev system, they'll have a test system, they'll have a sandbox system. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Man, yeah, and all the telcos run. Yeah, there's so many major institutions that run on these. It's amazing.
Yeah, so I mean, what about when you like have hardware failures and stuff like that? Like if you lose a mainframe part that is like a mainframe that's been running for 10 plus years, like what's the sort of deal? Like, is it?
So that's not really the case, right? So this hardware gets swapped out maybe every 3 to 4 years. And you're just basically borrowing it. You don't like, I mean, you can buy it, but no real enterprise does it. You just sort of borrow it from IBM. You lease it, right? And then you replace it every handful of years. And then the software itself, they have a major release, I think, every other year, right? So right now they're on version 2.3, which was released last year. And it supports like KDF AES, and it supports all kinds of like modern stuff. But in terms of like if you have a hardware failure, it is super fault tolerant. So you can be mid-processing a transaction on one CPU, and if that CPU dies, it'll switch over to another CPU, and you can hot swap that CPU out and replace it.
What architectures are we talking about? Like they're using not just x86.
It's RISC. It's not x86. It's RISC, but it's specifically Z architecture. And if you want to, you can. It's a proprietary. It's not. I mean, you can read about it in the presentation if you wanted to, but it's a CPU built and designed for mainframe operations.
Looking at the NSC lib for TN3270, I'm just thinking from a network attacker's point of view, what would we be looking for to identify like a ZOS operating system? I can see from the NSC lib that the telnet banner is not subtle at all.
No.
So are other interfaces? Do other interfaces exist? Do they support SSH?
Oh yeah. So it'll be I mean, it's just SSH, open SSH. So you can't really tell if you're running like if you see an open SSH port, you can't really tell if it's mainframe or not, right? That's not.
Can Nmap fingerprint the OS?
So Nmap can sometimes fingerprint it. I've had challenges helping. So if you look at the profile for Nmap, right? So if you look at the profile and you look at, so if you look for TN3270 and you look for Kix Web and you look for network job entry, NJE, I added those manually to the profile. Like I did a git pull request, working with the Nmap people to help get those added to the library, right? To help get that support in there. Before 2015, or maybe 2016, I would say, it used to call it OS 390 for some reason. But if you do a scan and you hit, in fact, does anybody remember the internet circa like 2014, maybe 2013?
I think you cut out, man. What'd you say?
The internet census? Anybody remember that?
I mean, it's pretty ongoing, actually.
So, well, I mean, like the original one, like the first one of telnet routers and stuff like that. Anyways, they published a list of all the all these ports, like these general ports. So they published this list that was like of all these various ports, and one of the port was FTP. And the FTP port, if you look at it, mainframes is very specific. It will tell you down to the version of the operating system that it's running over FTP. Right now, it supports FTPS, so it's not like your standard like clear text FTP server. So it'll support FTP over SSL, and that's fine, like cryptographically speaking. But what's interesting is using that internet census, you could find maybe 600-700 mainframes that are in, just based on that one port, just based on FTP. So
if
but
you're,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off, but if you're on an engagement, like you mentioned one really big thing, which is password and credential guessing and sweeping. That seems scary, but it also seems kind of predictable, right? What are some of the more exotic things that you've come across that you've been able to own mainframes with?
I mean, it's the fundamentals. I wish I was kidding, but it's like a misconfigured, like a Tomcat server with default creds.
So we're talking 90s vulnerabilities.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, no,
Okay.
look, straight up, it's like default creds on a Tomcat server led me to a shell, now mind you, a shell is just a shell, right? But with the knowledge that I have, I can take a shell from nothing to owning an entire environment, right? So it's like when we talked about like, yeah, I'll just go after the runs the mainframe. That's cool. You have admin creds, but what do you do with them that matters? But the enterprise doesn't care that you have admin to the mainframe. What they care is their DB2 database that has every single person's health record for an entire state.
Well, do they though?
That one matters.
Or
Yeah.
do they say we have mitigating controls? Like we have all these things in front of it, and that's kind of what my experience has been. Is no, we don't touch that big black box with the red button. We have all these mitigating controls in front of it. Like we have firewalls and we have this and that. Don't touch that thing, please. For the love of God, don't nmap it. It will crash or it will die.
Can I speak for a second on that before you even respond? Like mainframe, you think about credit unions and you think about them being like non-profit agencies. You think about how deep these people actually dig, and that's like the downfall of mainframe systems in a lot of the senses. How many people can actively support that, or how many people are that damn good at it? And it's rough. And it's like nice to have you here, and it's nice to have you speak about mainframes and defense and what you're actually doing to, remediate this issue, because it's not something that goes untouched by any means. But it's awesome to have you here.
I mean, I would say it's about the same percentage of people who are good at setting up Linux servers for banks around the world, right? I mean, the talent pool is limited, but the amount of implementations of mainframe is also limited, right? So it's not like there's not like billions of mainframe instances around the planet.
So you mentioned before, like getting a shell through Tomcat, right? And let's assume you've got an underprivileged. I'm assuming it's an underprivileged shell. They're not running Tomcat as I guess UID 0. Is it still root?
No, I mean even if it's root, you don't own the mainframe, right? I mean it's.
All right, so
I'm way ahead of you, but basically Unix runs as part of the ZOS operating system it runs the TCP/IP. But even if you get root in the Unix part of ZOS, doesn't mean you've owned the environment.
It's like a subsystem.
Or what is that then?
It's called Unix System Services, or OMVS, and it's like a subsystem of the operating system, for lack.
So
of a
once
better
you
term.
once you get to the shell, right, and you want to break out of this subsystem, I'm assuming you're going to need a bug and a payload and stuff like that. So like, are there readily are there example payloads for this architecture that you can like QEMU test in QEMU or anything, or is this all like
Yes.
you need a framework, you need a mainframe?
Okay, so there's a handful of things you can do, right? So there's a gentleman by the name of Ayub. His GitHub is like at AYOUL, I think 1 or maybe capital I3. But basically his GitHub has a whole bunch of scripts. So there's a scripting language on Rex, and if you're an Amiga person, that may sound familiar because it's a scripting language. But it's basically like before Python, right? Before Perl and Python, Rex is a scripting language, super powerful. He has written a bunch of scripts that tell you what is available for you to go after. So basically, whenever we do a pen test, we're actively looking, we can access APF authorized library. Sort of the first thing you might target. An APF authorized library is a library. It's almost like a kernel module that you can install yourself, right? And so if you can install a kernel module and run it, you have full control of the entire operating system. I'll say ring 0 because that's what people understand. And so once if we target that, and there's multiple other ways you can. So at Black Hat, Big Endian Smalls is actually going to be talking about targeting SVCs and reverse engineering them to find backdoors that you can use to take advantage of, right? So if you're interested in this, I would recommend you go watch that talk. But there are things we can look at, and there are libraries. So like I said, Ayub has a great collection of rec scripts to do that. I have a couple of scripts like on my GitHub that are for system enumeration. So for dumping a startup map, for dumping various system information that is good for you, all kinds of stuff that you might look for to do privilege escalation. There's all kinds of different ways. Look, the challenge is, this is, like I said at the beginning, this is a very immature space, right? There are 7 of us who do this publicly. Well, I would say there's 7 of us, but there's really 3 or 4 of us who talk about this publicly, right? We don't have a framework. If you look at Metasploit right now, there are some mainframe libraries, again, from Big Endian Smalls. If you look at his stuff, it's about targeting and getting, doing privilege escalation through JCL, doing privilege escalation through APF authorized libraries over FTP, and those kind of attacks. But in terms of like, is there something equivalent to the Linux enum program that you just run as part of your OSCP to see what's available? That doesn't exist today. That doesn't mean we're not working on it, and we're actively working. But it's just a lack of people and a lack of resources is why that doesn't exist.
So are you actually and like, you don't have to give away stuff that you don't want to give away, but it sounds like you're working on possibly a CTF that's more centered around mainframes. Would that be an accurate statement? That sounds cool.
Yes, and actually, so if you attend the Share Conference, which is sort of like the big mainframe industry conference, I think they're going to have a mainframe CTF this year.
That's interesting. And what's it called again?
Share, SHARE. It's just like an industry conference, but it's like DEF CON, but for mainframes. And they'll have a mainframe. I think they're going to have a mainframe CTF at the current one.
How interested are people that are one step removed from mainframe security? How interested are they in security?
Depends who you talk. Well, so when you think of a mainframe, you can't really think of it as a box like you would like a Linux or Windows machine. You have to think of it as more of a data center within a box, right? It's got all these different. That's how I explain it. So imagine you have an entire Active Directory domain, and you have multiple machines on that domain, and you have all kinds of things running on that thing.
Okay,
but think about the mainframe as all that into one package.
I can think of like really specific things that I would target and attack if I was going after Active Directory. If I was going after the idea of a mainframe or a mainframe, I can think of two things now that you've mentioned, which is awesome, but I can't really think of a lot of specifics. Is it maybe a learning thing that needs to just be
it's
out there?
Part of it is a learning thing, which is why look, no lie, we've beginning and smalls of I run a class that we teach, and we do that specifically so we can get the knowledge out, right? I mean, we understand there are hundreds or thousands of corporations running this platform for critical loads that, and the pen test team, the red teams, their AppSec team have never looked at it because they've been dealing with fires in their Linux and Windows environments, right? And so finally, we have these environments, or like I work really hard. I go to audit conferences and I tell the auditors, hey, you guys should be pushing your enterprise to be doing better on this platform, right? Because for a long time, people weren't even allowed to do an Nmap scan of a mainframe because you would bring it down.
Yeah,
that was the fear. But then on the other side of the fence, you have IBM saying, well, we have 9s of time. Well,
what?
Like, so it's up like 364.8 days a year.
Oh, 5 nines. Okay.
Right. Like it's up an insane amount of time. But the challenge is, how do you reconcile that? Well, if I can't do an Nmap scan on your mainframe,
secure,
then how can you tell me at the same time that it has unrealistic uptimes? Like there was, in fact, so the first time I did a real mainframe audit, they told me, well, we don't do vulnerability scans because it could bring the mainframe down. And so I wrote up this audit thing saying, okay, well, time to move off the mainframe because it's not safe to use this platform for our critical data processing. Yeah. And then I got no end of shit from the partner to the client, all this stuff.
I used to love saying that.
Yeah, well, because they wouldn't let us do vulnerability scanning because we're going to bring it down, but at the same time, it's needed for critical business processing. So eventually, they came around and said, "Okay, we'll let you do vulnerability." Right? That's sort of how it goes down. But
amazing.
I think
it's so typical too. Honestly, it really is so typical in not only enterprise but critical infrastructure, just everywhere.
Yeah,
it's super typical.
So now, when you're talking about these different, when you're saying about these systems that will go, people are afraid will go down if you scan them or touch them or do anything to them, but you have to somehow test them. What are some of the biggest sort of challenges that you have as a whole in actually doing these engagements? Because it seems like the whole sort of we really need you to test this for compliance purposes or auditing purposes, but we also don't want you to touch it at all. What are the sort of challenges and how do you work around them?
So first, I lean heavily on compliance, right? So I always say things like, well, PCI requires this or HIPAA requires that. Our auditors require this. I always just lean heavily on that. And then they always come back with, well, it's out of scope for this reason or that reason. And then I push back and say, why, and blah, blah, blah. But in my experience, and I've been doing pen testing, I've been pen testing this platform for a while now, I have never brought a mainframe down.
I have.
Right? Through an Nmap scan, I've brought components of it down. I may have killed an application that's running. I've killed. In fact, I was setting up the lab environment for the training I'm going to give, and I killed Kix through an Nmap scan. Right, and then I rebooted it, and that's fine. But yeah, I mean, but I've never brought a mainframe down, and then even if I did, right, if I did bring a development mainframe, wouldn't you rather know? Right, wouldn't you rather? Yeah, that's a vulnerability. That's a DOS vulnerability. If I can bring your mainframe down, I can stop you from processing flights and ground your fleet for the day. Right? Wouldn't that be something you want to know versus keeping your head in the sand and pretending like that's something that's not a risk?
That's when it really comes down to management too.
This talk just got real mature.
Yeah, right? But this is the kind of stuff that everybody can expect to encounter at some point in their InfoSec careers if they go into InfoSec.
Well, we joke, I joke a lot about the mainframe and fucking with it and stuff. But you can cause serious outages on this platform. It is no jokes. And so like but some of them are kind of just used for stupid stuff. But like going after this platform, especially if you're in the enterprise, it's not going to be today we're not pen testing our mainframe, tomorrow we're doing a mainframe. Like you have to find, like I personally do not feel comfortable testing a production mainframe. Because if I bring it down, or if I'm able to get so far into the environment that I can change a person's health records, I don't want that happening in production.
So aside from changing health records, the fact that it's still that finicky of a architecture that you can just bring it down by doing normal, what we would consider normal pen test stuff. That's saying something though, right?
Well, I think it's less. Okay, so this is a story that I share every time I talk about this, but long ago, someone did an Nmap scan. When Nmap first came out, like the first frac issue that it came out, someone took that and ran an Nmap scan against the mainframe, and it brought the mainframe down. And that was because of the way they implemented the stack, the TCP/IP stack. When you read the implementation guidelines for the stack, it says you do a three-way handshake, right? You do SYNAC, SYN, the whole thing, right? SYNAC, SYNAC. But what happens when what happens when someone doesn't do the handshake properly? Well, the people, when you pay a bunch of engineers to implement something, they're not paid to think what if, they're paid to implement the spec. And so what happened was the first time they implemented the spec, they used jobs on the mainframe. Like they used ZOS is a very job-based operating system. They use jobs, and every time you connect it to a port, a half open, like you did a half open handshake with Nmap, it left it half open and it ran a job, and the job would send its ACK/SYN back, and you would never reply, right? But a job's timeout was something like 2 hours. And on these systems, they're heavily tuned to death, right? So they're fine-tuned to how much you need. And so you would limit how many jobs can run concurrently to something like 5,000 jobs. So all of a sudden you hit the first 5,000, and now you've brought your mainframe down because it can't run any other jobs.
Exhaustion.
Exactly.
Consuming all the open ports.
It's literally a resource exhaustion because it's saying it's waiting for you. It's waiting for it sends some packet back, and now now it's waiting for you to reply, and it's like, well, I didn't receive a reply. I'll just wait for 2 hours.
Like a built-in
decoding.
The job control, the job control stuff, like the only times that I've really interfaced with a mainframe, not in a pen testing perspective, but just understanding how the rest of the network talks to it, have been through like batch jobs that get uploaded over FTPS or like NFS or something even more archaic. At best, SCP to some folder on a mainframe, I suspect. And sometimes I've seen JCL files or routines or procedures or something that I could modify. I didn't know anything about the language though.
If you had access to
does it have the same kind of
JCL?
problems that like does it have the same kind of script problems that like a Perl script or a Python script?
Yeah, so if you look at
escape and like opening arbitrary files, escaping to the OS.
Yeah. So if you look at MSF, if you look at Metasploit right now, you can use MSF Venom to generate JCL that'll give you a shell.
Wow. Okay.
So today, like right now in Kali, you go to Kali.
All right, that answers all of my questions. Thanks.
And it'll give you the JCL you need. So what the JCL does is it's basically an inline compiled to a temp file. So it's just in memory. A temp file that will compile a program that Big Annie and Smalls wrote in assembler that connects back to a listener or opens up a port.
That's
crazy. Or if you don't have access to the compiler, so I have in my GitHub a shells Git, which is shells written in Rex and C that will also work. Right. So if you have access to JCL and you can run, there's a handful of commands like there's USS commands, there's TSO commands, and then there's Rex commands you can run. If you can run any of those, then you can do you can get reverse shell.
I don't mean to dive in or interrupt, but man, it seems like you want us to.
Yeah,
it's a lot of really good information, and I think it's a space that definitely needs to be explored. And
I mean, I wouldn't be here if I didn't think I want more. So my whole spiel is I want more than not.
Man, you might cut out.
Right?
You cut out. What did you say?
Oh, sorry. I want more people doing this than not doing this.
Yeah.
Right. I think
it's
this is a systemic important platform.
Yeah,
and the fact that it's so under researched is terrifying to me.
I was commenting before this that it's one of the few topics that I think almost everybody that's listening and or on the show is gonna have to Google and look into.
Yeah,
It really is.
Never heard of half of these protocols and just systems in general, and but one of the things people have been talking a lot in the Twitch chat. I'm not sure if you've been watching it, Mainframe, but they've been basically people have been trying to figure out the resources that they can use to actually learn. So, I mean, because most people don't have access, or even if they are in a space where they could potentially access, maybe not be afforded access to a mainframe, especially anything that's remotely touching anything important. So how would the person listening right now, let's say somebody who already knows a bit about network security, maybe he's done CTFs or OSCP and wants to try to get into the space, how would you recommend that they get started? Are there platforms that are good for emulation that they can just quickly spin up an instance of, say, oh, here's one that's processing credit card data, here's one that's processing flight data or medical data, that they could just boot up and say VirtualBox and start playing with?
One. All right, I'll run through the list here. Let me try to break it up. So if you're a student in any school, you can sign up for the Master the Mainframe program. This is a program put on by IBM. And they're basically, now mind you, it is not a security-based program. It is for learning the basics of the architecture and writing programs in C and COBOL and whatever on the platform. Right, but those are the fundamentals for information security, anyways. So it would be beneficial to do the Master of the Mainframe program. I just pasted a link into the chat.
Awesome.
Beyond that, so there is a emulator called Hercules, which is an open source emulator for ZOS and Windows and Mac. And you can run a really, really old version of the mainframe operating system. It's called I can't remember the name of it, but it's super old. It's basically public domain mainframe operating system. That's how old it is, right? But you can run it, and but everything works because ZOS is so backwards compatible. It's TN3270. They just implemented a TCP/IP stack for it. If you want to get sort of your toes wet into this environment. And running this really ancient operating system in Hercules, I've run it on a Raspberry Pi. You can go ahead and yeah, why not?
That's crazy. Were these all running, by the way, on X25 and POTS before? You said they just did IPv4. That's mind blowing.
Well, this is for the open version, the one that was public domain, right? It didn't talk TCP/IP before. It used some SNA networking magic.
Do you have a tutorial somewhere for the Raspberry Pi thing? I think that would be great for people to try to jump into this just to reproduce it on a Pi.
I don't know. It's somewhere on my Tumblr. I'm gonna have to look it up.
Nice.
But honestly, your best bet is to just look at Hercules Turnkey. But there's a person who put out this version of Hercules. It's called the Hercules that is MVS 3.8J. But basically, this is you run this in Hercules and you'll have a mainframe running up in 2 seconds, and it runs. And yeah, I mean, it's old and it's not what enterprises are running today, but it's the equivalent of running like Apache to learn web servers, right? You got to start somewhere. And then if you really want to get into this, there is a version that you can buy. You can buy it from IBM, but it's very expensive. It's called God. They change the name every freaking quarter. But when I talked about it, it was RDZ, so Rational Developer and Z Unit Test. They also call it Rational Developer for System Z, Rational Developer for System Z and Test. There's all these names, right? Basically, IBM offers a full-on emulated mainframe environment that you can run on your laptop. And I have run it on my laptops. I'm running one on a laptop right now. If you work for an enterprise, if you work for like an airline or a bank or a manufacturer, or anyone that has a mainframe environment that's running an IBM mainframe, ZOS mainframe, not AS400, but ZOS mainframe, you likely can get this product for way cheaper than what it is offered on the website. Right? On the website, I think it's like $5 to $10 grand. But if
it's called RDZ.
Let me see. I'll look it up. Rational Developer. And
believe it or not, we got a lot of people that actually work in environments like that.
So if you work, let me see, IBM's.
IBM Z system mainframes.
Looks like Trojan has it linked in Twitch.
So basically, this environment it lets you emulate, like, no joke, a full-on, and in fact, it's what we use, a no joke mainframe environment. It's just like an emulated environment, right? So it's a little slower. It's not as fast as running it on the actual hardware, but all the kind of exploits that we deal with, even buffer overflows, work on the hypervisor.
So here's one of the rough questions I gotta ask: why continue to stay on mainframes?
Why not? The return on investment has already been paid off like 30 years, and
because there's
never
only
goes
7
down.
people that know how to do it.
Yeah, but that's fine. You only need 5 people to run it.
That's why he's here and trying to express it. To be quite honest, like, he talks about COBOL and how many people, like, the amount of people that actually know that and know how to program around it is honestly fucking insane.
Yeah, but how hard is it?
5 guys
like,
in this country that could do COBOL and they make
that's
like
not
$100,000 a
true.
year.
There's thousands of people, but like, even then, how many people can do C? C is very hard to learn. But once you learn C, like how hard is it to learn COBOL or Python? Like, how hard is it to teach like, once you understand a programming language, the rest of the programming languages are fundamentally the same. They're just a bunch of if and for
we know
loops.
that, but HR doesn't know that. So you
Right.
gotta have some kind of cert on your on your resume that says certified COBOL ninja.
It's what? Yeah, well, that's okay.
Or
Yeah, Rockstar
experience that proves it. Like, you can't just
79 years experience with COBOL, but
exactly.
But that's an HR issue, right? But that's why IBM offered the Master of the Mainframe program, because literally people go into the Master of the Mainframe thing and come out with jobs in enterprises.
But yeah, you're not talking mediocre entry mid-level jobs either. You're talking
they're going from college to $80,000 to $90,000 a year jobs managing the OS system. Now, mind you, they're low-level administrators on these boxes, right? They're not going to give them like straight access to copy DASDs and shit around. But
copy what?
That's a hard drive images. Don't worry about it. But basically,
it's an interesting term. What is it?
Direct access storage device. It's what you call a hard drive, right? But it's like storage. It's just the idea of you can have multiple volumes and multiple hard drives, and then you say, okay, we're going to move everything from this hard drive to that hard drive. That's what storage people do.
How do you do forensics on that?
You don't right now is the answer. That's the thing, right? So like we talked about, the mainframe is such an important part of our financial fabric, but the maturity in the InfoSec space just isn't there.
So what are some of the default ZOS usernames and passwords?
There's just one, and it's IBM user.
Oh my god!
And its password is
IBM password.
No, the user is sys1. It's not even 6. It's not even. It's 4 characters. It's sys1 is the default.
That's as bad as DECnet from the 80s. And 90s.
Yeah. What's great is here's what's great. If you delete that user ID, if you delete that user ID from the user database and reset your mainframe, the mainframe will recreate the user ID with default password. And
so it's basic.
So it's hard coded.
It's like it's an access camera then.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, if you want to think about it like that, yeah. I mean, the problems the mainframe face are no different than anything else that is in this planet, right? In terms of IT, it's just an IT system made by people.
Could you DOS the mainframe with Nmap and get it to reset its default password?
No, well, so no, unfortunately,
What if you DOS
you
the
can't get it
login?
to delete. It's well, I mean, you could. So there have been talks of like, well, yeah, if I know every single user ID, rated them all, you can just guess 5 passwords on all of them, and then lock out every single user.
Yes.
Right.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, that's crazy, man. That is wild. So what is a typical engagement write up look like for you, other than like a lot of flames and like drawings of flames?
I mean,
is there
you
any
joke,
light?
but
Is there any light at the end of the tunnel?
it's no different than if you're doing up any other pen test.
Sure.
Right? It's just a computer. It's just an environment. Just because it's more important than other computer systems doesn't mean that you treat it differently. Like I personally don't.
From
really,
what
really
you've
treat
told
it that
us, like
differently.
it's had even less security attention, and therefore a lot of these really old school and simple bug classes apply.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I'm literally.
I think the only solace that I take is the fact that there aren't that many people looking into it. Right?
Well,
Like in my
that's just security by
publicly,
obscurity, right?
yeah, that's literally the only solace I take. But that's the challenge is for the longest time it has been security by obscurity, and then literally by shining a little bit of the handful of us that do this research have caused waves in the community.
It's like I'm thinking like drawing parallels between this and IoT. You know, just put out like all the shit with bugs from the 90s.
Yep. Now, I want to go back to kind of what I asked originally and just dig deeper. You mentioned that the most common screw-ups are deduced via password spraying, user enumeration. Keep going on the list. There's definitely a lot more, and we kind of jumped off of that quick.
Yeah, I mean, so I'll go down the list. So one is going to be, so Vanguard puts out a list of like their top 10 things, and it's always the same top 10 things, right? But number one on that list is access to APF authorized libraries, which, if you're thinking about it in the Linux equivalent, is access to the set. If on the mainframe there's a folder, and everything in that folder is set UID. Let's just use that. I know that's not possible, but say it is. On the mainframe, that's possible. You have a folder where everything in that folder is set UID. Okay, that's called APF authorized. If you have write access to that folder, I can own the mainframe, because what APF authorized means is I can get into supervisor state.
All right, final punch. How many times do you come across this typically? Percentage? 50-50?
I'm not. I don't know.
Is it crazy high?
It depends on the environment. So, like in a development environment, it's going to be higher than normal because auditors don't look at development environments. But those development environments are connected into prod for some reason, right? Luckily, auditors know to look for APF authorized libraries in production, so they're fairly locked down.
Okay, right on. Sorry to that though.
No, that's fine.
Keep going on, juice.
The other space that doesn't get looked at. So we've talked so far about the infrastructure, like the operating system layer, right? And then if we look at Kix is the equivalent of like a web server running in TN3270. That's like, it's like a web server. I'll just leave it at that. But it suffers from the exact same challenges as a web server. There is a part, if you look at Ayub script, Ayub has a script called Kixpone, which utilizes one of the Kix transactions to upload and then execute JCL through Kix, right? And if you have access to these specific, there's like one or two specific panels that you need access to. If you have access to those transactions, you can get a shell through Kix. And then you have other things like, can you access applications without authentication? Can you do user enumeration in Kix? Can you access? And that's just Kix. there's whole other things. You can look at various other applications. So TPX and ACF2 allows you to enumerate users. There's basically, the reason I'm in this space is because it's new and interesting, right? Like we joked about like legacy and it's old, dying earlier, but I do all my research in this space because no one's doing any research in this space, but also because there's so much surface for me to look at that it's just fun.
Do you think looking at exfiltration from these systems is almost more valuable than trying to stop the bleeding in them? It sounds like the bleeding is really gushing.
I mean, okay, one, I'm gonna get in shit because someone's gonna call me out on.
That's all good.
We
all get shit.
So I'll say,
sit on here.
I mean, it's not as bad as I say it is. Okay, so my job is to basically terrify people so they get started doing research in this space. That's my job. But as far as we can tell, on various systems that we've looked at, no one is doing any outbound packet filtering in the mainframe because everyone in every company implicitly trusts their mainframe.
Yeah, that's like a huge takeaway.
And
for
so
anybody that's listening, by the way.
Yeah, so I asked a buddy of mine, and he wrote, and I think it might be on Git. So a gentleman by the name of like I said, there's 7 of us. Henry, and we all talk. Henry Kuiper, he wrote a Java proxy that will run in ZOS, and if you run this proxy, all of your attacks will look like they're coming from the mainframe. Which to me means, oh, you can talk to every system in the enterprise and trust the mainframe. The mainframe has to talk to everybody because it's the center of the enterprise, right?
It's like the equivalent of spoofing the printer, right?
Basically, if your printer was the only printer in the company and everyone.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Damn, that's like that's terrible.
Yo, please set up that test environment. I want to mess with it now. That sounds really fun.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I mean, look, like I said, it's a fun space for me, and it's so just fun to fuck around. Like I treat it as just like a what if space.
That's honestly
right. Like
what we're all about.
Like so, Kix does JSON, right? It does JSON stuff. Are JSON attacks applicable in Kix? Like deserialization attacks, can you do that on Kix? I don't know. I haven't done the research yet.
Probably.
Can you do? There's all kinds of stuff. Like we didn't know. So I gave Big Any and Small, and I gave a talk at DEF CON. And when we submitted the talk, we said we're going to present the world's first ZOS buffer overflow. Period. We actually didn't know when we submitted the talk if that was possible or not. But
did you end the talk with, I got the creds?
Well, no, he ended the talk with, look at this, I got a shell.
Awesome.
Like I got a root shell, right? So, and in fact, I implore you, you can watch my half of the talk if you want, but skip it and skip to Big Any and Small's part, which is phenomenal. And he talks about doing buffer overflows. It's fucking amazing.
It's got a good it's got a good name too, by the way.
Yes.
Off topic, his Twitter username is pretty badass. I like that.
Yeah, I love it.
Thug as fuck.
But the thing is with this space, like for literally 30 to 40 years, people can't do a buffer.
I think it's because you don't have that not evil, but you don't have that devious mindset. You have a bunch of engineers
that
have been just working on it, doing the thing that makes the thing work.
I think
let's fuck with it.
I think the challenge is availability, right?
Sure.
So you have, in fact, okay, this is my favorite story to share. I was doing a mainframe audit, and I was told that there are 3 pillars to mainframe security at this company. One is compliance, which is not really security. 2 is you can't go out and buy the operating system like you can in Windows or Linux, notwithstanding Linux is free. But you can't just go and buy the operating system. And then the 3rd pillar was the fact that even if you could buy it, you couldn't run it on anything. And so then I went home. I was traveling, and I went home, and instead of spending time with my wife, I downloaded a copy of the operating system from BitTorrent, and then ran it, and then wrote up an article under a fake name, and then went back to work on Monday at the same client site and say, not only can you get it for free, but you can run it on commodity hardware, and there's a hacker online talking about it. So your two of your three pillars are wrong.
That's
Yes.
great. Oh, that's
Hack life, daddy, hack life.
yeah. That's
So
cool,
it's-
man. That's a good story.
Well, thank you. But but that's the kind of mindset you're dealing with in this space is until they are shown wrong, incorrect, they will believe their biases.
Really, until you take a baseball bat.
Basically, yeah. Until now, that's not true. Not everyone is like that, right? I don't want to paint the entire community with one brush.
You know what?
But-
Let's paint them all. Let's paint
but,
them all.
like,
And
I was
then they can
invited-
come at us and say, "No, look what I'm doing for security," and let's invite them to come out of the woodwork.
I was invited to give a keynote at Share, which is like a mainframe industry conference, and I didn't know anyone at the conference. Imagine like you're going to DEF CON, but you don't know anybody, right? You just walk in like blind. And my face is on a bunch of posters around the thing, and I show up to like the dinner before the conference starts, and I don't know anyone. I'm just gonna have dinner by myself, and I sit down at this table alone, like some loser. And this guy comes up, and he sits right down next to me, and goes, I recognize you. I recognize you're on those posters. You're the mainframe hacker who's going to give the keynote on Tuesday morning. I'm like, yeah. He's like, good. My plan is to go out drinking on Monday, and because your keynote's first thing in the morning, I've got to get up till 10 o'clock because I think your talk is not worth my time. Said it right to my face, like literally. Right, I'm trying to
Why
eat
would you
peacefully.
bother doing? Oh, what an asshole!
Just
Did you
so
call him-
well, okay.
What's
So
his that? No,
Dude,
so-
but
yeah,
then that goes back into the point of like what's most important or what's most vulnerable at that point in time. Like it's not going to matter if you're talking about mainframes if someone's not going to see any value in it. And like that's the
Right.
point of view coming here too. Is like you're
So
spelling out-
his mindset was not that his mainframe didn't matter. It was just that it was not hackable.
What company, by the way?
I don't know, and I didn't ask.
I'm
Nor
just-
do I remember his name.
Good.
So I give him my phone, and I give him my phone with a link to the website that has all the mainframes that are on the internet, right? And I go, just scroll through this list and see if you see anything that pops out. And he's going through the list, and he's like, oh, this is bad. And then he sees Isuzu, and he sees Iceland Air, and he's like, well, this is very bad. Like these are not good things to be on the internet. And I asked him, I go, why does it matter if it's on the internet or not? You told me that you don't think my talk is valuable because you don't think this platform is hackable. So why does it matter if it's on the internet or not? Right? Like if I have the world's most indestructible car, I should be able to park it in the worst neighborhood in America, and right? It's unbreakable. You can't break into it. And he goes, okay, I see your point. I'll see you tomorrow morning. And sure enough, he showed up and he came and he shook my hand after the keynote.
Is he one of the 7?
No, he is. No, definitely not.
I had to ask.
But it's dealing with that. That's part of the challenge is dealing with that mindset of it's unhackable, right? On the one hand, we won't let hackers touch it because we're worried you're going to bring it down. But on the other hand, you don't need to touch it because we've been told it's unhackable anyways.
Yeah, man. The problem is the future is bleak temporarily, at least, because in order for there to be progress in this, there usually has to be destruction.
Right. And like I've said, I would say we are where Cisco was in like early 2000s. Like remember when Cisco used to like go to DEF CON and sue DEF CON for preventing a Cisco talk from coming out, right? And like Cisco, we don't have any 0 days and stuff. And now Cisco has like a CVE program and like they'll issue CVEs day of and all this kind of shit. That's like, okay, so this is the other thing I have to bring up. So mainframes, IBM does not release vulnerabilities on the mainframe. They will not tell you that a vulnerability exists on the mainframe. Even if you are a paying customer and own licenses and all this shit, they will not tell you about a vulnerability. What they will tell you, and I'm telling this for the listeners who work for enterprises who have a mainframe, you can sign up for what's called the IBM Security Portal. And in that site will be all the patches that you need to apply to your mainframe and a CVE score that patch fix. Now, the challenge is that patch, all you know, is for a product category. So this patch is for kicks. You don't know what the patch is fixing, but all you know is that it has a CVE score, so it's urgent and needs to be applied.
I know how to.
But I think if we look at the Windows lands like Patch Tuesday, like it's Exploit Wednesday the next day because everyone reverse engineers patches.
Yeah.
So with a bit with a bit more coverage in the space, like maybe that could be mainframes at some point.
Let's be real. If you're a nation state and you have access to this information, and you know how important it is to governments and banks, would you not already be doing that?
I would argue yes, but at the same time, you can just use the upstream people and their access, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean,
so I'm really curious actually if there are in incident response firms, IR firms that have actually seen direct mainframe attacks. That would be super interesting to know about.
If you really want to read, and okay, here's another link. Man, we're gonna go way over. If you
good.
really want to read about one, there is the Logica breach, which happened in Sweden. So, okay, do you guys know who Anakata is?
Nope.
Let me back up. Do you guys know what the Pirate Bay is?
Yeah, dude.
Okay, so there is I personally have never been there. I have only heard rumors about the website.
Sure.
And so it was run by 3 guys, and one of the guys' name was Anakata. And
he's a fucking data center autist, but yeah, continue.
Anywho, I won't comment on him. I've only talked to his mom, and so he was arrested and allegedly committed a mainframe breach of a government mainframe in Sweden. Okay.
Oh, interesting.
But the Swedish government knew that the second, because they indicted him and they got him expedited from Malaysia where he was, and so they knew that if they arrested him and got him brought over from a foreign country, that everyone would think it's because of the Pirate Bay.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So what they did is they released everything about the breach online. They released the entire investigation on WikiLeaks. Oh, sorry. They introduced it, and then WikiLeaks published it all on the internet. And I'm gonna send you guys that link now.
Yeah.
But basically, the entirety of that breach is exactly what he did. It is the forensics activity. Now, that mainframe was not set up properly. So in the Unix part of the mainframe, you have syslog, and their syslog was pointing to /temp. So it would put the syslogs in /temp, which what happens when you reset a mainframe? It deletes that folder because it's temp.
Opens that password.
Right. So what happens is he deleted he breached the mainframe, and then they found the hacker, and they're like, okay, we'll just reset the mainframe. Whatever problem this is, we'll get rid of it.
Jesus.
Yes.
That was their fix to a breach?
Initially, he was there for 3 years. Okay, so they had multiple different things they had to deal with. But the first thing they did is reset the mainframe, and that deleted what he had done on Unix, because it deleted all the logs of his activity were lost because they were pointed as /temp.
I think I've heard of /temp as a landing place for those in other places too. So I don't even think that's an uncommon thing.
So if you really want to, and I implore you, so what I did when that came out, my email address is actually in the paperwork because I thought I did it for a bit, because at the time I was the only person publicly speaking about mainframe hacking, and what I talked about it is exactly what he did before I talked about it. So they were like, well, this must be the guy because he's talking about what exactly a person would do, right? So, but what's interesting about those files is if you read them, let me pull up this link. But basically, if you read them, there are snippets of code scattered throughout the documents, right? I've read them all in English and in Swedish. I've translated. And if you read through them, there are snippets of code, but in some documents is the first half of the program. So this literally happened. I gave a talk in Sweden about the breach, and the person was like, how did you recreate this program? And I'm like, well, in the English document was the first half of the program, but in the Swedish document was the second half of the program.
Right.
And so I just copied and pasted them and put them together. And both guys looked at each other and like, I thought we agreed it was going to be the top half. I thought we agreed it was going to be the bottom half, right? And so I was able to reconstruct some programs like that. Some of them are screenshots, and I just reconstructed them. Some of them are, in fact, so I'm giving a talk at Sky Talks at DEF CON Friday morning.
Nice.
About during this investigation.
Wait. What time Friday morning?
11 a.m. So bright and early.
So get there at 10.
Yes. And so this talk. So what happened during this whole investigation? Some rando reaches out to me on Twitter and sends me a pastebin link and says, "Is this real?" And it's a buffer overflow that gives you system special through an APF authorized Unix module that gives you basically the ability to do whatever you want. And so I'm going to, that pastebin is still live, by the way. You click on the link in the, so if you go to Sky Talks website, you can click on the link. But I'm going to walk through exactly what that program does and how it did it and why I think it was part of the breach. That Sky Talks.
Hold on. The DEF CON description of your Sky Talk has a pastebin link that we can check out right now.
Yeah, I'll load it up right now.
Pretty sweet.
I hope it's there. Yeah, I just checked it out the other day.
Nice. Awesome.
Oh, maybe it's not on the website, but yeah, I loaded up the program the other day. But basically, if you want to hear me talk about that and talk about the breach investigation a little more, you can go to the Sky Talks site. Or I've talked about it at length at a Hacktivity conference in Budapest. I talked about the whole breach and I went into the details about the breach and stuff like that. If you want to know more, there's a whole bunch of research that I've done in that space as well. So just from like you asked about forensics and kind of thing, and I think that breach is the only publicly disclosed. No, well, what's interesting about that breach is in the report are a bunch of third-party mainframes, like in China and other countries, that were referenced as points of entry, right? So that someone breached those mainframes and then used those to connect into the Swedish mainframe, and then those mainframes were no longer internet accessible after the breach.
Wow.
Notification went live, right? So the thinking is, someone told those people, "Hey, you've also been breached by this person. You need to shut it out and clean up."
Maybe get the goddamn thing off the internet.
Well, I mean, again, it's to me personally, if you lock different, right? So, sorry. To me, it's no different than a web server that sits on, right? If you secure it, yeah. I mean, if you lock it down enough, like, who cares?
Well, what's locked down enough though? It sounds like there's no amount of locking down that.
Nah, you can lock them down well enough to stop an adversary like me, right? There's things you can do. Yeah, I mean, don't expose TN3270, don't expose NJE, don't expose kicks, don't let me connect to VTAM. Just present a web page. It's probably enough.
So, like on a database level, is that stuff like publicly accessible, or are you just parsing this out to front ends for users?
I mean, if you follow my Twitter, you've seen I've been talking to Hacker bunch about where their scope ends and begins in terms of mainframes. But I will say I have seen on the internet DRDA interfaces into DB2. I've also seen RESTful interfaces into DB2 that are internet facing.
It's disturbing as fuck.
So,
well, it's actually getting a little bit later than I expected, but it's because we've all been very enchanted by this conversation. But Mainframe, do you have any last words or any ways for people to contact you about this, and if they are interested in any of your stuff?
So I'll say this. Okay, so I Big Annie and Smalls and I run a class called Evil Mainframe. If you go to evilmainframe.com, you can pull up the sort of where we're speaking. Unfortunately, this year I think we're all sold out. We're going to be teaching at DerbyCon and then at Black Hat Europe. I think Black Hat Europe is still there's still space. I'm also teaching a mini class, like a 4-hour workshop at B-Sides Las Vegas. And if you're in the Netherlands, Henry's going to be teaching a similar mainframe mini hacking class at a conference out there. So if this is something that you're interested in and sort of piqued your interest and you want to come sort of learn some of these techniques, or you want to actually just fuck around with the mainframe for like 4 hours, definitely check out those mini trainings, like the workshops. Or if you want to come attend the 2-day training where we actually teach you how to do a real pen test and what to look at and sort of dig into the more. I mean, the mini class is sort of getting your feet wet, and we show you sort of like high level like Nmap and OSINT and all that kind of stuff on the mainframe. But if you really want to come and get like 2 days worth of like in front, and we actually run a CTF in that class where we have points and you win a prize at the end, kind of thing. So I think that's the first thing I'll push is the evilmainframe.com training. And then but like the workshop, like I said, the B-Sides Las Vegas workshop goes live soon, and I implore you to sign up if this is interest you. You can reach me on Twitter at mainframed with a D 767, and it's the same on Twitter and it's the same on Gmail. On Tumblr and Gmail. And if you want to just email me, I answer questions and do what you need to do if you're learning. Now, mind you, like sometimes I get super, like one time I got a super sketch email from a Proton Mail email address that was just like, I'll buy your mainframe exploits for big dollars. I'm not keen on that. But if you send me an email you want to learn, or you have questions about some of the scripts and how they work, I will gladly answer those questions. We are always looking for new talent in this space. I run a secret society where we hang out and chat about these kind of things, present about this topic, or want to present about mainframe hacking to us. We will let you into that secret society. So if that's something that interests you, reach out to me. We're just really all I'm trying to do is just get more talent and more awareness about the platform.
All right, one last big question I got for you. Are you gonna have a mainframe in your hotel room that we can come check out?
Yes.
Fuck yes.
Probably. If you're
missing it.
I mean, if I have to bring it with me to do the workshop, so of course,
just make sure it's not in a dark corner where Dan could touch it, because.
Well, make sure the red button's very well protected, maybe.
No, you can touch the button. Don't worry. I'll let you touch the
All right.
Very nice.
Is it warm in here, or is it just me?
Power level over
Dan is-
9,000.
Dan is
Getting
very
late,
excited.
boys.
Beautiful. This was awesome, man. This is really good stuff.
Thank you so much for coming and talking to us. It's
Well,
awesome.
Thanks for having me. I'm sorry for being so adversarial in the beginning, but you can tell I'm super passionate about this, and I really appreciate that.
If you're not pissed, you wouldn't give a shit. So
Dude, that was awesome.
Yeah, this is how we usually are in general, so it fits right in. It's nothing.
Yeah.
We're super abrasive people. We're terrible people.
If you think we all love each other, you're wrong. So
This is literally InfoSec. What you're talking about. This is just the little car. So someone did post a link to that paste bin in the chat. So in the voice chat. So if you want to check that out, if you read that C program and then come into my Sky Talks, because I'll explain exactly what the fuck it's doing with demos.
Dropping some zero day.
Well, thank you very much for that, and we'll post some more, or you shared a lot of resources, so we'll put all this into our show notes for this episode. So you guys can expect to see that tomorrow with some resources and links. So everybody here, thanks so much. I'm not sure about this show for Sunday. I'm going to be at Hope, but I'm going to try to see if I can figure out streaming possibilities for other people to do. Everybody here, don't forget the Friday, if you're in New York City, come see Dark Web with us and dress up in your most ridiculous movie hacker gear. It's welcome. Everything is fair game.
Tell everybody.
And tell everybody, even if you're not in the New York area, if you know anybody there, share our status that we just posted on on Twitter. And also next week, the episode that we're going to do, I want to do an announcement tomorrow, is going to be about hacker parents and how hackers raise their kids differently. And we'll have a bunch of different perspectives and people on to talk about raising their kids in this age with the mindset that we have. So,
No shit.
That's
yeah,
awesome.
it's gonna be awesome. So,
MG, you're up.
hell yeah. So until then, though, either we'll see you possibly Sunday, if not Tuesday. So thanks, everybody. Bye.
Oh, hack the Gibson.